Welcome back, friends. Today we're talking about spiritual buzzwords. And as I was thinking about this episode, it made me reflect on even the word spiritual could be a buzzword. So today we're going to discuss all the different buzzwords you may hear in this community of growth in the human journey and make you feel a little more comfortable about where you fit in, what resonates with you, what you may think is untouchable for you, but actually is, or you might already actually be doing it. So we're going to talk about all the things around the buzzwords as you open up your journey as a human. Anthony, I think that you would be a great one because here's why. You talk about this quantum healing and you're very logical, grounded, and stuff like that as a person. So things have to make sense to you in a scientific way and all of that. And so you're drawn to like quantum healing, and I've heard you talk about that. Whereas some other people may just go within their soul, and like Carol, like she just reaches out and it's natural for her. She doesn't necessarily have to have a word around it. At least from my understanding, we're all different, is my point. And for me, it's like when I first started doing this, I needed astrology and I needed human design. I needed all these things to have like the data on what's happening spiritually. So it's just a random example of like all the differences we have. So how do you feel about buzzwords, Anthony, and healing and the work you do and all of it?
Well, I like that you said a while ago resonate because it's like that, right? If I'm into science and the universe and how everything works, stuff that is related to that, but also spiritual, is going to catch my attention and it's going to keep me interested. So I would never have found spirituality, let's say, through astrology because I have no interest in astrology. Whereas I love space and how quantum mechanics works kind of blows my mind. And in actual fact, I think if you look into quantum mechanics, it sends you back to spirituality. And that ties in as well to even mediumship. Let's say I suddenly come upon mediumship and now again curiosity takes over. So the buzzword never got me there, right? It was never mediumship or do quantum healing or do whatever their term they're going to use at the time. So I'm not blown away by buzzwords. It's more, does it interest me? And also, I like exploring stuff. By the way, when I talk about things as well, I use the bloody buzzwords because I have to describe something, right? If we're talking about manifesting, I'm going to be on about a vibration and a frequency. But like, I can't get around that because we're all energy and we're all vibrating at a particular frequency. So, yes, they're buzzwords, but like, I have to use them. But I just mean the buzzwords when it comes to, let's say, activities. So the activities of how you're playing around or how you're interacting with spirit, they have no like meaning or hold on me whatsoever. It's more, am I engaged with that activity? Does it make me more curious about whatever it is I'm exploring? And then if it does, I stick with it. I'll give you a perfect example as well. Cards, I was never into before. And then I got a deck of cards and I was like, these are really useful. And now I have so many decks of cards laying around the place, right? And people will ring me and say, "Can you quickly pull a card?" And I'll do it. But that's the point that like I never forced myself into it. I kind of stumbled into it, and then it kept my attention. Um, and so I continue then to play with whatever it is, but not because someone said it or because it's a particular buzzword most people are doing at the moment.
I think it's important to point out that people will have different meanings for the same buzzwords. It can be very complicated to figure out what are we talking about when you use the word vibrations. Everybody will have a different idea. Channeling, what is that? Everybody has a different idea. We're talking today about what it means to us, but we are not end all be all authority on what exactly everything means. But we're just here to talk about what we think most people will generally agree on. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I feel like we just want people to feel empowered on their own journey and that they don't have to line it up under a particular buzzword. It's kind of like Anthony was saying, like he's just drawn to what feels right for him or what makes sense to him, as am I, as are you. I don't want people to feel, I don't think any of us want anybody to feel like they're not included in this woo woo. There's another buzzword, spiritual journey, because it's all really at the end of the day, it's all a human journey and we're all connected, you know? So that makes a lot of sense, Carol, what you're saying, the perception of others.
And woo-woo, it's a funny word because some people think it's maybe more derogatory. I love it. I think
Yeah.
it just kind of explains like there's a lot of stuff here that we don't know. So I use woo-woo very lovingly, but I also know that some people will use it in terms of like, oh, those people, they're so woo-woo. They're using it in a way that's not coming from maybe the nicest of places. I think that's one of the buzzwords that people can be confused about as well. But for me, it just encompasses all of the things we're talking about here and on all of our episodes too. It's just a world of looking outside of the human self.
So what do you find, Carol, as a teacher, like with your students, like what's one of the buzzwords that come up the most that you kind of give comfort or expand their thoughts on comes to a certain word, like, am I ascending properly? Or, we need to raise our vibration.
That's vibrations is actually what I was going to bring up. Frequency, to me, they're interchangeable, but people can be very confused about exactly what that is, including myself, So because again, we all have a different perception of what these words might mean. I think Anthony's a good one to hear from about what vibrations and frequency means first, because he and I probably have a different take on it. What do you think, Anthony?
I think it would be where we're coming from. So if you're coming from a spiritual, let's say, aspect, whereas I've discovered spirituality, but it was almost through the science route. When I'm looking in and seeing everything in the universe is energy and its form comes down to its frequency, its vibrate. There's experiments and they're doing stuff in science that is throwing all of the traditional thinking out the window. So even years ago, Einstein would call quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance. Like, that's a very scientific term, right? But they didn't have a clue what the hell it was. And yet it makes perfect sense now because, then when you hear stories, something happens to someone and then the parent knows instantaneously that their child is in danger or their close relative is in danger, whatever it may be. Quantum entanglement now explains how that is perfectly plausible. Actually, I always say it's God, the source's joke. It's the big joke that humans will get so intellectual and that we will start studying everything. And then the big joke is when we look into it deep enough, it sends us right back to where we came from. So it's almost like you could be like me and be the nerd and be into science, but the more and deeper you look into it, you actually get sent back to how I think you will approach it. So coming at it from the spirit side, we'd say from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I love that. I love that God, the universe, put a big joke in there to say, like, oh, look at them now. They'll think they're so smart. And then when they get to it and they look into it deep enough, it'll be like me looking back, waving at them.
Yeah, well, that is a completely different take that I would look at it too, because I don't need to always know the science, let's say, behind something. I'm just more of that empath, and I just feel like what feels right about anything. And vibrations is one of those things that I feel is a feeling. It's how we move our own energy. We've talked about energy in a different episode, but we are energetic beings. And when people say, well, what do you mean by raising your vibrations? I think of that as like we're even making ourselves laugh raises your vibrations. Doing something that makes you happy can raise your vibration if you're looking at it in terms of energy. Some people will say and ask about frequencies as if it's a different term. And if they're thinking about it like that, they're asking, do we move at a different frequency? Do we vibrate at a different frequency than angels, spirits, people who have passed over? I think that, yes, we are operating on a different energetic level than spiritual beings. And so I do think that our frequency, our vibrations will be different. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can I just add in? I think Tesla said years ago, secrets to the universe, you just think in the terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. And so I remember years ago hearing that and being like, oh, yeah, I can see the link now that I've heard that. It kind of seems obvious. I am energy vibrating and giving off a particular frequency.
Yes, I like that. That's a much more succinct way to put all of this.
I was thinking about the way I approach it, and I'm one of those people, if I'm interested in something similar to Anthony, like I need some kind of proof. but it has to make sense to me. So for me, it's like I go to history and astrology. It's really like the Farmer's Almanac. It's kind of like the history of what happened X amount of years ago when the planets were aligned in just that same space and the themes around that. And so for me, that's like my proof. Like you said, Carol, you just like feel it and you know it. I'm so envious of that because for a long time it was just like, well, I need to see, I don't know if it's anxiety or whatever, just who I am. But like for me, the data of like, okay, you always hear the term like history repeats itself. And to some degree, that's true. And if you think about, we're all one and it's one big circle that never ends and it's connected. It makes sense to me that history would repeat itself. So the buzzwords or buzz things for me are like astrology, something that can map it. I can attribute astrology to the Farmer's Almanac. I can attribute the different planets being in certain places to things that happened when those planets were in the same place hundreds of years ago. And to me, that makes sense. And I also feel like I'm driven to that sort of thing or those sort of buzzword items because I always want to be relatable to people that are in navigating their human journey now and maybe not as spiritual. So for me, it's like a little bit of proof. Like, here's the proof. Like when Pluto was in Aquarius this many years ago, this is what happened. And this is the same energy going around that. It's like a tangible human sort of thing that even if you're not spiritual, you can connect the dots and it would check the box for me. And maybe it will for others who aren't as woo woo or spiritual or ascending or all of those other things. So that's just kind of my way. Everybody has their own way that's right for them. And again, like, let's talk about like one of the buzzwords that really has been going around for quite some time and may scare people is shadow work. Like, oh, you need to do shadow work. And depending on how you say it, it can be a beautiful thing or like, oh, I'm not good enough thing, depending on the person taking it in. So really what shadow work is just being curious and going to your inner child and working through things that may have happened and understanding. It's a level of getting to a better understanding of yourself. So it doesn't have to be scary to do shadow work. But that's one of those buzzwords that you hear a lot. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I agree with you. Some people find that word very scary, and it depends on the process that you're using. I think when you're doing shadow work is whether it's scary or not. Like you said, it's really more about finding out about yourself. I think of it as it's a way to just help heal yourself by looking at the things that you want to avoid, right? So that's therefore the stuff that's in the shadows. So if you look at it like that, we all have a shadow behind us, in front of us, whatever it is. And the shadow work, I think, becomes important or as a buzzword because as we are learning to do psychic and mediumship, it is a healing journey for us, even as we're learning it. And you have to be able to address all of the own things in your life that you haven't addressed in order to be able to help others. So it's a bit like physician, heal thyself first. So this is what shadow work is. And I don't think it should be something really scary.
Yeah.
It can't be for me because that's what I do in coaching. I was like, and I suppose that's another point. Like, I don't call that shadow work
Mm-hmm.
then. Like, someone doing self development or increasing their own self awareness, like, to me, that is the shadow work. You're turning over the stones and seeing what's
Mm-hmm.
buried underneath them. You're growing as a person. Like, I love helping people do that. But yes, it's daunting, but that's how you grow in both spiritually and within your human life and the human experience.
To use another buzzword, it's raising our consciousness, let's say. I think that's a kind of a phrase people will say a lot or
Hmm.
use even the term consciousness. Another term for that too would be awakening. So consciousness, awakening, to me, those kind of go hand in hand. And Anthony, I know that you talk about that a good bit. I'm not throwing you under the bus again.
No, to be fair, I love consciousness.
I know. So I know that you like to talk about that a good bit. We talk about it actually ourselves just a lot of what exactly does that mean and what is consciousness. So what's your take on that?
I'm not tied to the buzzwords, like I said, but at the same time, I need to, like, I'm helping people grow. So I need to use terms and stuff and words that can kind of help them understand it, right? So we had this discussion before where I was like, I have to say, like, if someone is on their spiritual journey and they're growing and they're exploring all aspects of their spirituality, to me, they're spiritually conscious. They're conscious of the fact that they are spirit having this human experience, and they're exploring that to the fullest. Right? We do that, so I consider us spiritually conscious. But that's not to the detriment of anyone who doesn't do that. And then, so because of that, awakening then to me is someone who has fully woken up. So, in other words, like Buddha, Jesus, there's plenty of yogis in India that have woken up. There's plenty of people in the West that have woken up. These are the souls that have almost had that reconnection with God, with Source, with the universe, right? It does something different. You're no longer just spiritually conscious and exploring your spirituality. Now it's almost like, for those people, I see that they've awakened. In other words, they've transcended their ego. So the ego no longer has a hold over them. Like, that's why we have those stories. Wasn't it Jesus on the cross and he roared out to forgive them all, for they don't know what they're doing?
Mhm.
In other words, I'm conscious, they're all unconscious, so don't punish them for it. It's the same thing that, I think it's Gandhi, but don't quote me, but he was getting beaten while in captivity, and then a journalist asked him long after, what was going through your head at the time? And he was like, how can I feel any ill feeling towards them? They're not consciously aware of what they're doing, right?
Mhm.
And everyone is on that journey and everyone's in different places. And the point is you don't judge anyone and where they are on that journey. But I just need those terms, whether they're buzzwords or not, I need them to distinguish where people are on their journey and where I am on my journey, if that makes sense.
It does. And I actually use awakening as the journey. It sounds like you're saying that's kind of the final
Hmm.
stop, let's say, or the end goal, but I think of it as the entire process of realizing exactly what you said. We're more than just humans. We are spirit having the human experience. To me, that awakening is the journey. That's how I use the word awakening.
And you're right. I agree in the sense that we can encapsulate the entire journey as an awakening
Mm-hmm.
process, right? So I totally agree with you with that. It's just like that, I suppose. People use the buzzwords for different aspects of the
Mm-hmm.
journey, and then that's what can sometimes lead to confusion.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like, I don't care what anyone interprets a particular meaning to be of a word either. So like that, we chat about things and then we say, oh, I think about that in a different way to you. And then we chat about, and then we both have an understanding of the different ways that can be interpreted. That as well is growth and understanding.
Yeah, so what you said, Carol, like I do think we're on the awakening journey, for lack of a better buzzword, you know what I mean? But yeah, because it never stops, even with those people like Gandhi or Buddha or any of those, like they were still human. And if you really look down into the history and the archives, there was a lens on them in that certain part of their life, but it doesn't mean they weren't human in other parts where they had, maybe some things that people could consider not so nice or whatever, because we're all human. And I think just allowing the space for that, we don't need to put everything in a box, including buzzwords, because they do resonate differently depending on the lens you're looking at it through, depending on how you're taking it for yourself, depending what resonates with you. And the one thing I was kind of giggling to myself, because I remember when I was like so eager to like tune in and refine my intuition and all of that. I was reading all this stuff about like the third eye, and I was like, where's my third eye? I need to be able to visualize it. I need to see it. I need the proof. And I see so many newer people kind of being interested in this stuff, like looking for a meditation to open it. I got to decalcify it, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm just like, that's one of the big like buzzwords, like third eye. And maybe when you're newer, at least for me, when I was really new to trying to figure what this is out. And now I just kind of giggle about it. It's just another marker on in your human self. You don't need to see it. You don't need to decalcify it. You just need to allow. You need the trust and allowance for it to happen. And then your third eye is open. It's always open. If I tell you about a bird and you can picture a bird in your head, your third eye is open because that's in your inner mind, at least in my understanding. So there's just so many things that could maybe scare people away or make them feel like they're not good enough when they're trying to do this stuff. I just feel most importantly, the more you know yourself and what resonates with you, and then you allow and trust that there's something bigger outside of yourself, it doesn't need to have a buzzword or a label, that you can grow it. That's kind of my feeling around that little ramble.
It's funny because as you say third eye, I get a visual, but it's not the actual eye. It's like more like the triangle with the eye inside. I think people are very familiar with that visual, but I think of that every time I hear the word third eye.
Yeah.
And that space that people are referencing, just for somebody who might not know, is that space between your eyes, just above your nose and forehead, the third eye. That's not actually where I feel like I receive information. It just comes in any kind of way. Sometimes I visualize it coming in through the crown chakra. So that would be at the top of the head. But like Tracy said, it just needs to be an awareness, trust, and allowance that information's coming in. It does it to me literally come in through that third eye space.
I know that it's an important part and it's an actual part in our human makeup, but it hasn't been proven scientifically that that's what's happening and we're receiving it through there, because if you think about our loved ones in spirit, they still communicate and they don't have a human body with a third eye. So,
I remember that when I was exploring this at the start. So like that, it's probably one of the most common things actually out there for is the third eye. So I have read on it and looked into it. I remember like years ago, I probably can't remember anything now, to be honest. And then again, it never caught my attention, let's say, like other things did. So I just let it float away and it didn't stop me on my journey. In fact, I started doing mediumship after all of that was fact, right? So it had nothing to do with that. So I always tell people that you don't feel obligated or required to do any particular ritual or to study any particular doctrine. Honestly, if you want to explore your spirituality and, forget the buzzwords, go inside yourself because that's where the answers are. And if you discover something and feel it to be true, or Jesus, this gets me really excited, or I'm really curious about this, that is your calling to like carry on with that for a while. And if you get fed up with it after a year, so what? You don't have to stick with it. I'm constantly asking the universe questions and for information, and the amount of stuff that just turns up in my path, like turns up right in front of me, whether it's a person will say something, and as soon as they say something, I'm like, that's the answer to the bloody question I asked. So it'll be a person, it could be a TV, radio, book, like it doesn't matter. And I put no limits on where that communication comes from. But the only person that guides me on my spiritual journey is myself and, let's say, the universe, source, God, whatever you want.
Those are some buzzwords, Anthony. Universe,
Oh, I
source.
am loaded. I can't. I don't even keep track of the buzzwords. Like you're just getting whatever the hell flows out of me. So.
Well, it's interesting because we, the three of us sitting here, are very familiar with a lot of these terms and we use them in speaking with ourselves and other mediums and each other. Sometimes it's easy to forget that not everybody understands what we mean by any of it, right? So that's why we are doing this episode. Like, let's explain a few things, or at least, from our perspective. I think another one that's I get asked about a lot is channeling. What is channeling when you're talking about spirit? And there's a million different definitions of it. And then some people will say, well, Abraham Hicks, oh, that's channeling, right? But I think that it's a subjective term as well. And to me, channeling is just us talking about the information that we receive from spirit, saying the words that they are giving us. To me, that's just very simple, a simple way to put it. I think other people might have a more complicated version of it. But in the end, it's just what is spirit letting us know? And here it is. We've channeled that information. We've spoken that information.
Another one too is healing. A lot of people, even if you want to send them healing and they don't do healing, well, how's that working? And a lot of people, probably the most common one is Reiki. Essentially, it can be sent a million different ways, and it doesn't have to be Reiki. It's not better than quantum healing or any of the other things, whatever. It's just how buzzwords or structures like around it, like Reiki has a certain structure around it that maybe helps the practitioner that's drawn to Reiki to do energy healing in that way, but it's still energy healing. And you don't necessarily need the structure or the label of Reiki or quantum healing or whatever, because it's all from this wonderful oneness in the universe. So again, it goes back to our original point of it's all in how you're perceiving it, but you can get there without having to feel like you have to do Reiki, or you have to do quantum healing, or you have to do astrology, or you have to do palmistry, because all of it is available in any of those things that resonate with you, you know?
Mhm. I tell people all the time, kiss. Keep it simple, silly.
Silly.
Right? Nothing's complicated. Keep it simple, silly. There's nothing complicated about it. So if I suddenly roar kiss at you someday, you know why. And the other thing is, I always say humans love to label shit. Like, we label everything, right? But I can tell you one thing that feels so true to me. The soul hates labels, and the soul does not want to be confined to any one thing. And so I always say to honor yourself and honor your soul. That's why we'd be always talking about being open. So something I'm doing today doesn't mean I'll be doing it forever. Or maybe I will be. Like, that's my point. There's no rules, right? We always throw rules out the window anyway. But there's no rules or regulations with anything I do. And nobody will tell me whether something is one way or another. But all of that is because I enjoy, let's say, the freedom. But I also know that, like, deep down, that's exactly what I should be doing to explore my spirituality. The soul does not like labels, it does not like to be confined. That's totally a human ego thing, in my opinion, anyway.
You ended with ego, and I was thinking about another thing. It was like there's this whole importance on you need to like have the ego death is a big thing that people talk about too. Like, oh, that person has too much ego. They need to work on their ego. They can't have ego when you're doing this work or you're being spiritual. Just you shouldn't have an ego in it. And I don't think that's right, because I think the most thing about being spiritual is being in balance with all the things. You need to quiet your ego, but you're still human, and ego is there for survival. It's a human thing that we need. And so there's a lot of worry about how big people's egos are and how to temper it. So that's a big thing in the spiritual community anyway. And in the worldly community, maybe those people aren't aware that it's probably should be a more important thing to look at on your own human journey, whether you're spiritual or not. So, yeah, that brought that one to mind for me.
Wayne Dyer says ego edging God out.
Mm.
So it's, to me, you need the ego. You have to have it as part of this human experience.
Yeah.
But the thing that I feel what you're on about is some people forget that they're spirit having a human experience.
Yeah.
And so that's then why people will say, oh God, they're so egotistic, blah, blah, blah. The point is, you don't judge them. Everyone is on their own journey and they're in their own place. And I often look at it this way. If you find someone who is egotistic or agitates you in any way, you look at that as a gift from the universe, because that is something that's been sent your way for you to grow. So forget about them. What did it bring up in you that you need to work on? And then consider it a gift. Because after that experience, you then should be very proud that you have grown yourself from whatever it was. And that applies to everything in life, not just people, obviously.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, but how many people actually look at it as a gift? They've been given.
Oh, I mean, hello. It's like I can coach on that, and I still have to like coach myself is the hardest part. So. But that's what I'm saying. You still don't judge yourself on that. Like, we're human, right? And we can't change the past. Like, you're created in the way that you are. You honor that, and all you can ever do is you're never better than other people. Just be better than what you were yesterday. So it's always yourself. It's never to do with anybody else. Am I better than I was last year? Yes. Am I better than I was? Yes. Am I better than yesterday? Yes. Why? Because I take all the lessons that are coming and I try to grow from them. And if you stumble and fall, so be it. You just get back up and you try again.
That sounds like a whole nother episode, because I was thinking of my
Oh, don't even
this
start.
morning. Like, there was a wasp that got in the house. This wasp got in the house, and anybody knows me, it's like if there's a bug, like I'll put it back outside, like, because I feel like everything has a purpose for something. I'm not just going to kill it because. But then I had my cat and my puppy and my other dog trying to dig out this wasp that went under this little table. And I thought, oh man, I don't want a dog to get stung, a cat to get stung. So I had to smush it. And right after I was like, because I normally wouldn't have done that, I was like, I'm so sorry, Mr. Wasp, but my ego is based on survival and I needed to protect my children, my fur children. So it had to happen. Such is the circle of life. And then I was just like, did you really just have that talk with yourself? And I was like, yes, you did. Oh, my Atlanta.
You know, what's interesting is I had my own wasp experience yesterday too. We haven't talked about this, but I had one on the inside. It was by the door. And I too don't want to just kill something just, because it doesn't belong in my house. So I opened the door and I tried to flick it. Like I had a coaster and I tried to flick it out. And he landed on the ground. And then I was like, oh no, I hope I didn't kill him when I was trying to not kill him. But obviously I'm not going to grab him with my hand and carry him outside. But he's okay. He eventually flew away.
So
I say. That's interesting because we've talked about synchronicities on episode as well. And I just find that interesting that we both had a wasp in the house just yesterday.
It's quite unusual, at least for me, and it sounds like for you. So, Okay. For me, that's a nod from spirit that we're on the right track, maybe with this recording.
Yeah, well, you never know what you're going to get in one of our episodes. You get a little bit of talk about nature, a little bit of talk about animals.
One last thing I'll say on this is buzzwords, or even words that we might use here that someone does know. I don't know everything. You're going to come across terms and things that you don't know. That's part of exploring this journey, and you go and learn. It's the same as being a child. You didn't know what a truck was, and then a truck passed at some point out that's a truck. You learn the words. Like, no one should feel ashamed about not knowing something. I just have to make that point. And the other thing is, a buzzword or not, or whether, let's say, influencers are mad about a particular topic at the moment. If it speaks to you, go with it, but you don't follow it just because somebody else said it. It's like what I said earlier on. All of the answers that you seek are inside you. And where you are on your journey is exactly where you need to be on your journey. As soon as you open yourself up to, let's say, acknowledging that you're on this journey and that you're totally open to being guided along the path, more and more and more stuff will come to you. And it won't care what word they're encapsulated by.
Could that word be etherealogy? Our new buzzword.
I love that. You pretty much summed it up, Anthony. Like, at the end of the day, all the buzzwords are part of the human experience if you allow it and take what resonates with you and follow it, like the curiosity of a child or whatever makes sense to you. And if you are one of those people that likes to follow a crowd because it makes you feel comfortable, then go ahead and follow them and then grow your inner self to where you can listen to what makes sense for you. There's no wrong or right answer. I think just buzzwords in general can be isolating for some people, and we just want to say that they don't have to be. They're just ways to label things. Sometimes we just want to resonate with a bigger audience, and so it requires a label so that more people are understanding of it or not. But it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, because source energy, God, universe, however you want to look at it, we all have it. We're all mind, body, and spirit. So thanks for listening to all our rambles, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Slán.
Bye.